If you go on YouTube, you can find a lot of videos talking about the divide between single-player games and multiplayer games. Most of these videos tend to take a side on the argument on which is better, most tending to side with single-player games since, let's be honest, multiplayer games, they don't really need much defending nowadays. These videos like to break down the pros and cons of both types of games to explain why one may be superior to the other. In this video, however, I simply want to talk about why I personally find myself to dislike more multiplayer games nowadays, and hopefully you can relate to what I have to say in some way, to give you a better understanding of this divide.
Every step you've taken from that cell, I'll make you regret.
The idea I'm going to be focusing pretty heavily on throughout this video is the idea of improvement. And before you assume that I'm some games journalist that's bad at video games and thinks they all need to be made easier and accessible, just let me explain myself here. Now, I have no problem with games that are challenging. In fact, challenging games are my favorites. Games that require the player to get better at it in order to progress and beat it are my favorite kind of games, including titles such as Dark Souls, Sekiro, RimWorld, and pretty recently, Metal Gear Rising. This is because these games let you feel that you are improving at the game, and that if the game feels like it's becoming easier, it's because you yourself have improved at it. Your own skill becomes this bridge that allows you to traverse all these obstacles that used to stand in your way. Every attack you dodge or counter from an enemy feels good to do since you know of all the times you failed learning how to do that. That feeling becomes one of my main sources of enjoyment from video games, that sense of pride you can give yourself when you finally achieve that challenge that has kept you stuck for what feels like forever. A good example of what I'm talking about can be found in one of the games I mentioned earlier, Metal Gear Rising.
I chose this. They're kids, you son of a bitch.
Well, for those of you who don't know, Metal Gear Rising is this hack-and-slash game where you play as a cyborg ninja known as Raiden.
Raiden!
Yeah, I think I said that right. As you battle through a number of difficult levels. The game is designed in this way where you can't just button mash your way through the game. You have to learn combo, parry windows, and the balance of being precise and ruthless with your sword. All of these mechanics shining the most at the stellar boss encounters that this game has. Normal enemies in the game can sometimes be cheesed by stun-locking them with repeated light attacks. Bosses will do the same to you though if you're not careful, oftentimes demanding the player to parry attacks constantly in rapid fashion just to hold your ground. It's the game's way of testing your skill, essentially saying you cannot pass this point until you have learned. For me, this manifested itself clearly as a boss known as Jetstream Sam.
I'm talking ideals. Excuse me? Forget it. We've both heard enough speeches about higher causes by now.
I came up against this guy around 4 years ago, and I was completely stumped. I had gotten to this point in the game by abusing enemies' weaknesses and healing items, so when I got to Sam, not only was I getting destroyed by him, I had no idea on how to actually improve. It made me feel hopeless, to the point I completely dropped the game. A few weeks ago, I started playing through the game again, and when I reached Jetstream Sam again, I got destroyed just as quick as I did 4 years ago.
What? Raiden? No! No! Raiden!
But this time around, I knew why I lost. This time I had this set of invisible tools that allowed me to realize the mistakes I was making and then improve upon them. After a few more tries, Jetstream Sam was defeated, and my 4-year-long boss fight was finally over.
Playtime's over!
Even though it took a long time, that sense of improvement I got from this moment has made Metal Gear Rising one of my favorite games now. Even though it took a while, the ability to improve like that really was still there. Now, at this moment you might be thinking, well, if that sense of improvement is what you want, then shouldn't competitive games be perfect for you? And that's where things kinda get complicated. On paper, that makes perfect sense. Multiplayer games probably have the highest skill ceiling than any other type of game. For all the praise I gave Metal Gear Rising for its sense of skill improvement, once you realize that Jetstream Sam can be beaten in 30 seconds, there might be a cap on how good you can really get. I know I am using a specific situation for an example, but the logic can be applied to many other game titles. A pretty common feature games have is a difficulty option, and if you're like me, you don't really feel like you have perfected a game until you can play through it on the highest difficulty. Over time though, even the highest difficulty can start to feel not very challenging, and this is all assuming that the game can even hold your attention for that long in the first place. On the other hand, online games can have a skill ceiling that is insane, allowing the players to always improve upon their own skill. That is if they realize it, and this is where the problem kind of begins to manifest. Once you introduce other human beings into the mix, a situation immediately becomes much more complicated. To put it bluntly, my biggest problem with multiplayer games is that it's hard to know if you yourself are actually improving or if the outcome of the game is from something completely outside of your own control. Take a common scenario from a battle royale, for example. The match starts, everyone parachutes down into the field, you land at a building and start looking for gear, but before you can find anything, another player comes in with a shotgun and one-taps you, and game over.
Oh, got me! Damn.
Now, did the other player defeat you because he was better at the game than you, or is it because you simply got unlucky? Most people would say, it's luck, he got the gun first. If I had gotten it first, then I would have won. Ironically, most people would probably feel like they outskilled the other player for getting the gun first. But then, let's consider everything around that moment. Maybe you died because you chose to land at that specific spot. Maybe there was a gun and you didn't see it. Maybe you could have ran away at the first notice that you were going to be outgunned.
It is likely no single correct answer exists.
All of these reasons could be right and all of them could be wrong. This is my problem with multiplayer games. It can be incredibly difficult to know if the outcome of the situation is more from the game or from me as the player. All of those reasons can lie within the game's initial design and not even the players themselves. Matchmaking is a fault that many people will claim to be a downfall of the given match. The idea that the game did not set you up against a fair opponent is a common scapegoat, but there is a lot of truth to it. Bad matchmaking can make it hard to identify your faults and your skill in the game, making that action of becoming a better player even harder. So then you might say, yeah, matchmaking can suck, just, don't hold those situations against yourself. And the rebuttal to this is, 1, it's hard just to ignore losing a match, and 2, in the age of Smurf accounts, rank resets, and hackers, it becomes even harder to know if you were in a situation where you were just hopefully outclassed by the opponent. The sad thing about the situation is that more and more online games feel like you need to already be good at them to play them. The mentality has shifted from you need to get good to you just need to be good. And this is why I believe many online games have begun to structure themselves around team-based ideals rather than solo improvement, since it is easier to be good if you're on a communicative team of people that all support each other. While that sounds good on paper, this does leave a large group of players who don't have that ability to form a team to be forgotten, causing them to be stuck in an environment that provides very little support for them to improve. It also makes just the act of playing the video game harder, since you're now relying on the availability of other people, not just your own availability. This is why most players nowadays will agree that solo queuing into a match, no matter what that game is always going to make your experience much more challenging. So at the end of it all, the real question is, can this be fixed, or was it simply part of the inherent design of online games? I would like to think that it can be fixed, that an online game can give the tools for the individual player to improve the same way single-player games do. Maybe a game like that already does exist and I just haven't discovered it yet. Though at the end of the day, this is just my opinion on the situation, and all reasons why I dislike online games might be the same reason why someone else completely loves them. The point of this video is I just wanted to give my input on this divide in the hope that I can help further the discussion on it, so maybe there can be some improvement on these genres in the future. Thank you for watching and listening to my bland voice. This is the first time I've ever made a video like this before, actually, so I'm completely open to improvements, like I've been saying this whole goddamn video, criticisms, and just, you know, things like that. And yeah, again, just thank you for watching.
Vuotta täytin. Isä poltti puiseen veturin. Se saunapesän tuhkattiin. Ei ollut aikaa